একাত্তর সংযোগে আপনাদের সাথে আছে মিথিলা ফারজানা। আগামীকাল 6 জুন 2 দিনের সফরে ঢাকা আসছেন ভারতের প্রধানমন্ত্রী নরেন্দ্র মোদী। বাংলাদেশ ভারত সম্পর্ক এখন এক ঐতিহাসিক মুহূর্তে পৌঁছেছে বলে মনে করছেন অনেকেই, এবং দ্বিপক্ষীয় সম্পর্ক উন্নয়নে এক ঐতিহাসিক সন্ধিক্ষণে পৌঁছেছে উভয় দেশই। সীমান্ত চুক্তি এর মধ্যেই আমরা শুনেছি যে সেটি একটি সাফল্যের মাইলফলক ছুঁয়েছে। শক্তিশালী, স্থিতিশীল এবং দ্রুত উন্নয়নশীল প্রতিবেশী হিসেবে বাংলাদেশকে গুরুত্ব দিচ্ছে ভারত, আর অন্যদিকে বাংলাদেশও স্থিতিশীল, শক্তিশালী, বন্ধুত্বপূর্ণ প্রতিবেশী হিসেবে ভারতকে গুরুত্ব দিচ্ছে। সম্পর্ক উন্নয়নের এই সন্ধিক্ষণে উভয় দেশ দীর্ঘদিনের অমীমাংসিত সমস্যার দ্রুত নিষ্পত্তির পথে এগোবে বলে ধারণা করছি আমরা। এই বিষয় নিয়ে আজকে কথা বলতে চাই একাত্তর সংযোগে এবং বিশেষ একাত্তর সংযোগে। দর্শক, আপনাদেরকে জানিয়ে রাখি যে আজকের অনুষ্ঠানটি আয়োজন করেছে যৌথভাবে একাত্তর টেলিভিশন ও ভারতের টাইমস নাও টেলিভিশন। আমাদের সাথে এই মুহূর্তে যুক্ত আছেন মোহাম্মদ এম জমির, সাবেক রাষ্ট্রদূত এবং ইনস্টিটিউট অফ কনফ্লিক্ট ল অ্যান্ড ডেভেলপমেন্ট স্টাডিজ এর চেয়ারম্যান, এবং আরও যুক্ত আছেন অবসরপ্রাপ্ত মেজর জেনারেল আব্দুর রশিদ, নিরাপত্তা বিশ্লেষক। ভারত থেকে আমাদের সাথে এই অনুষ্ঠানে সংযুক্ত আছেন পদ্মজা যোশী উপস্থাপক হিসেবে, এবং আরও আছেন সাবেক হাই কমিশনার ভিনা সিকরি, এবং আরও আছেন নিরাপত্তা বিশ্লেষক মারুফ রাজা।
A joint Delhi-Dhaka broadcast between Times Now and Ekattor TV. I'm Padmaja Joshi. What is going to be Prime Minister Narendra Modi's focus when he makes his first trip to Bangladesh? Of course, he has a major achievement under his belt with the land boundary agreement. But what's going to be the next step? Mithila, it's over to you now. We hear that Dhaka is quite excited, getting ready to host the Indian Prime Minister.
Major General Abdur Rashid, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. First is Dhaka. As a whole, the people of Bangladesh is very eager to give a very warm welcome to Modi. It is his first visit. Certainly, the people had few expectations on this visit. I'm sure they have fallen short of it. The first is that you have already mentioned the land boundary agreement which will be with him, but another two issues were very much prominently impacted on Bangladesh people's mind is Tista river water sharing, another one is trade deficit issues and border killing. So here I expect that Tista water sharing treaty is not going to take place at Dhaka during his visit. Certainly border management, we might see some sort of a development of creating a more accommodative border for the people of Bangladesh and India, and which might reduce the killing and bring it to zero. And trade deficit, that is the focus, that intensive connectivity network, that is a strategic plan that going to put in this area for the trade and commerce development. So we are expecting a big achievement over there, but these sort of strategic issues do not touch the people because they like to see what we get immediately. So this has got an impact, going to give an impact in future overall for both the countries, not only both the countries, I would say rather region, and also it will be a strategic partnership between Bangladesh and India to have future domination in the Indian Ocean as well.
I believe that national security, stability and territorial integrity, these are the normal three elements that define the baseline understanding of both Bangladesh and India policymakers. General Rashid has just pointed out that there will be some disappointment that this visit is not bringing into focus the question of agreement on the sharing of river Tista waters. But we are hoping that this is a very good first step, and that we hope that this will initiate the forward-looking political will, which is important to bring about greater connectivity, economic development and prosperity for not only Bangladesh and India, but also for other countries in the region. In this context, I believe that building mutual trust and getting rid of trust deficit is also equally important. So there will be issues which will have to be addressed, and it has to be addressed with an open mind on both sides.
Thank you, Mr. Jamir. Padmaja, I'm going back to you. I think you have heard us, and what is there in your end?
Absolutely. In fact, Mithila, that's the question, the points that have been raised by our panelists. I want to first pose to Ms. Sikri. How important do you think that the Teesta water agreement not being on the table? Our External Affairs Minister has made that clear already. Sushma Swaraj has said it's not going to be on the table, even though Mamata Banerjee is going to be accompanying the Prime Minister. Do you think that it's important to move beyond what could be seen as a setback, because there are more important issues to address this time?
Yes, I'd like to first of all say hello to all my friends in Bangladesh, particularly those in the studio, and to say that I see this visit as exceedingly important. I think what Ambassador Jamir just said about building mutual trust and overcoming the trust deficit, I think Prime Minister Modi's very special effort in getting the land boundary agreement unanimously passed in the Indian Parliament has been a very important measure in this regard.
Absolutely.
It has been a very important measure of building trust and confidence, because he has brought together 2 or 3 elements. He has overcome the opposition parties, he has brought together the state governments, and he has overcome opposition even within his own political party in some of the state units in getting the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha to unanimously pass the LBA. Let's not minimize this, because he has done this very specially because he is convinced of its importance for the bilateral relationship with Bangladesh, and he was convinced that he had to do this before he went to Bangladesh. Now, having said that, let me say that having gone his visit, which is now anticipated in the next very short time, he will be looking at the issues that have been raised by General Abdur Rashid as well. For example, the trade deficit. Let's not focus on just a mathematical figure.
Absolutely.
I'd like to tell our friends in Bangladesh that their trade deficit with China is much bigger, but it's never mentioned. However, what will happen, I hope, on this visit is perhaps a special economic zone for Indian investors in Bangladesh, and this special economic zone will become the place for Indian companies to invest, to produce, to sell in Bangladesh, to export to third countries, or to export to Northeast India. So it's not just trade, it's trade, investment and services. The connectivity area that has been mentioned in such a big way is a very important service aspect of the links between India and Bangladesh, and this connectivity, when it is set up, will service not only Bangladesh and India, but the entire sub-region, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India and Northeast India and Nepal. Now this services network is going to give a huge impetus to Bangladesh growth and Bangladesh business, because Bangladesh will be the hub of this.
Absolutely.
Now, talking about Teesta, I'd like to come to your question on that. I think Teesta is a work in progress. That's very important. Just as Prime Minister Modi was able to bring the state governments on board and everybody on board for the LBA, he will surely do this with Teesta.
And this has to be done incrementally. But you know, before we talk about trade a little bit later on the show, I want to ask you about the security cooperation, Maruf, because that's going to be of great interest to India. Where do you think the Prime Minister can take steps forward as far as it comes to ensuring India's interests are protected vis-a-vis our borders?
Well, I think the first, the first issue that keeps coming back primarily because of the consensus Mr. Modi has been able to build on the land boundary agreement, there are security implications for that also, because the enclaves which are there on either sides of the border, which were not very clearly demarcated, and their citizens' rights were not being given to them for a variety of reasons. Now, with the demarcation of the border, the land boundary agreement and the exchange of enclaves very soon, it will automatically address a certain element in the whole security discourse between India and Bangladesh. The second aspect, which is equally important, and we haven't seen any mention of that as yet, is the fact that there is an assumption, to some extent, perhaps rightly so, that certain number of bomb blasts in recent past and certain terror activities taking place both in Assam and West Bengal, Assam with Ulfa and West Bengal with some connectivity with the Jamaat elements that are operating in Bangladesh, are something that India and Bangladesh could address more aggressively.
Absolutely. Major General Rashid, would you like to address that? Can we get that reassurance from Bangladesh on this trip by the Prime Minister?
I think that's true that Bangladesh has given enough indication as well as taken the physical measures to make this northeastern boundary more secured by dislodging all these secessionist elements like Ulfa and others from Bangladesh territory. and government of Bangladesh is very focused on this issue, having a zero tolerance on
Has that been
against
enough?
terrorism as well
The
as.
BSF also said, Maruf, that at least 50 to 55 such camps still exist in Bangladesh.
I don't think so. That may be his
Insurgent groups from the
assumption.
north.
To my mind, here Bangladesh position is very clear, and to my understanding, I do believe no such camps do exist in Bangladesh at this moment, and that is the trust and the confidence.
Well, I add one point here.
I believe that has been developed between the two countries, and for which, you know, with this land boundary agreement ratification, it is taking a new height. And another, I would like to say that certainly the border is a source of insecurity, no doubt in it.
At this point, I'd like to link this up with what General Abdur Rashid said about border killings, because a lot of the illegal activity at the border is happening partly because some areas of it are not demarcated, because of enclaves and adverse possessions and so on. That element will now be out of the picture. But the second aspect why the border killings are happening, and this is perhaps the most important, is the illegal activity, the cattle smuggling from one side, the human trafficking from the other side. And I do hope very much that there will perhaps be an MOU on human trafficking between India and Bangladesh, so that this aspect can be taken care of. As General Abdur Rashid would know, that India and Bangladesh have agreed that our BSF men do not carry lethal bullets now. So obviously the very fact of border killings will now go down. But our BSF people are now subject to attacks by these illegal elements, by cattle smugglers or human traffickers. And so, this too has to go down. We have to curb the illegal activity. This must be discussed. Bring the illegal trade as legal trade, and I hope the LBA will help in that.
Padmaja, there's just a quick point.
I just like to add to Bina Sikri, we discussed this issue at Delhi.
The government in Bangladesh is in cahoots with certain ISI and other related elements that have been reaching out to some sections of the people there, but that is something that they have been doing all over the world. They've been reaching out through Nepal also. They've been reaching out through Sri Lanka. I mean, these are reports that are coming in. But a more comprehensive approach to stemming the tide of anti-Indian sentiment and a formal government-to-government arrangement to do that would be a huge confidence builder. So therefore, as was recently written by an eminent Indian columnist, that whichever way you look at it, Bangladesh is in Pakistan. And the Indian National Security Advisor has been on record to say that it is India's most important neighbor, and we are extremely sensitive to issues in Bangladesh, and how we can both work together should be the agenda of both governments and not opposing each other to get political brownie points.
Absolutely. Mithila, and do you think that that really is the need of the hour, that you have this, we've got two strong governments in both the countries, and this is something that is achievable?
No, thank you, Padmaja. বাংলাদেশ ভারত সম্পর্ক নিয়ে একাত্তরের এই বিশেষ সংযোগ একাত্তর টেলিভিশন এবং ভারতের টাইমস নাও টেলিভিশনের পক্ষ থেকে যৌথভাবে আয়োজিত এই বিশেষ সংযোগের এখন একটা বিরতির সময় হয়েছে এবং বিরতি নিয়ে ফেরত আসছি আবার ওই আলোচনায়। বিরতির পর আরও একবার স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি আজকের বিশেষ একাত্তর সংযোগে। এই অনুষ্ঠানটি একাত্তর টেলিভিশন এবং ভারতের টাইমস নাও টেলিভিশন থেকে যৌথভাবে আয়োজন করা হয়েছে। One thing I would actually like to address, Mr. M. Jamir, I think you would also mention that both the countries, they have agreed to not to use the lethal weapons long before, but do you think that India and Bangladesh, maybe both of the countries or maybe India, are they very much firm to their commitment not to use the lethal weapons in the border? Mr. M. Jamir and Major General Abdur Rashid.
Well, if I may add here, we have been hearing about the absence of the use of lethal weapons, but as far as we can see from the papers, people are still dying on a regular basis. They are being shot dead at the border. And if I may point out here that human trafficking is a word which is vastly abused rather than, I'll not say even misused, I'll say abused in the context of Bangladesh-India situation. We have people who are going to the border. We have had problems because we had an enclave. We also had problems because of adverse possession. But as far as I can understand, what needs to be done is to improve the visa system. Because once you have a proper visa system, I know that when I was in Delhi, you mentioned that about 600,000 visas had been issued. But what we need is visa like it is done in Britain or in America or in Schengen or in the case of many other countries on a longer basis. If it is done for 3 years, multiple entry, then the number of visas comes down, then people can visit, then people can go for education, they can go for medical treatment and for various other reasons. Now the next point is, why shoot people with bullets? And why even rubber bullets? Because what can be done is, there are people on the ground, they can be, if anyone is trying to cross, if you can see them in your rifle crosshair, go and arrest them, take them, intern them. And don't forget that when I was ambassador in, this is what Mrs. Sikri knows very well, I mentioned it as well before. I remember when I was ambassador in Rome, we had this extremely difficult situation of hundreds of thousands of people streaming into Europe, which they're still trying to do. And nearly 70,000 of them were from India who had crossed over. Now, what I'm saying is, let's not shoot people. No, let's not shoot people. That is not the answer. We have to have mutual trust. We have to have faith in us.
I agree, we can discuss ways of making this smoother. You know, there's a problem in technical access to the online submission of visa applications because somebody grabs all the lines and, you know, blocks access. I know all those problems are there, and certainly the access can be improved. But please, let us not mix the visa system with illegal activity at the border. Under Prime Minister Nehru, with Prime Minister Noon, this was one of the issues. So it's a problem. I think, for me, the way to stop the illegal activity is to convert these areas of poverty. They're extreme areas of poverty. It's a porous border. Sometimes you have, you know, a living room in one area.
Ms. Veena Sikri, how do you respond about using the lethal weapon?
Now, yes. So let me please finish. I was coming to that. So one thing is to try and do our best to convert the illegal activity arising out of poverty into shared prosperity through border hearts and other methods. Secondly, when you talk of lethal weapons, I think our BSF does have instructions. They only issued rubber weapons. But please, let's not forget, when I mention illegal activity, the people committing the illegal activity are fully armed. Please understand the situation on the ground. They are armed, they have machetes, they have...
I think Major General Rashid has something to add on. Will you please allow Major General Rashid?
What I would like to say that border is a place of tension and place of organized transnational crime groups. They are committing crimes, but that's what I do agree with you, that we need to look at the border in such a fashion so that it must be not only looking at the physical measures of fencing or making the BSF or BGB stronger or giving more weapons or taking out of the weapons. That's not the solution. Solution that we have to make, we have to understand that this is a problem areas, and to solve this problem we have to look at the borders and make an interactive border management system, which will be a combination of all these things along with what you have said, that improvement of the condition of the bordering people, and so that they do not indulge themselves into smuggling. Another point I'd like to
Rashid, would you please add one more thing, that do you agree that most of the criminals, they are armed criminals who are being shot in border?
No, this is maybe a perception, because so far I have not seen any person who is being who has been shot by the BSF having arms beside the dead body.
May I say that
so this as long as there is no arms beside the dead body, a person being killed by the official bullets, so we can't exactly say that he is a real criminal, because it is unproven. But I just come back to my point So another one is that I said that we have to remove the illegality, that is smuggling or cattle trading. We have to create something so that it can take place within a legal framework. I have got another proposal also, that about the local movement. If we say the visa regime is a problem, already said by the Ambassador Jamir, I said we must make an arrangement so that local people has a historical and family ties, and we must create a legal framework so that they can move. And this sort of interactive measures if we take, I think that will be an approach to solve the border problem. Not only the
I think Padmaja is saying
quick
something.
word from Maru.
Padmaja, the general probably got his own perception based on particularly a military point of view dealing with situations of this nature, and our militaries all over the world do tend to have a different approach than I would say political scientists or even academic. But I think the ground reality is twofold. One is that the same border guards or BSF personnel on the Indo-Bangla border, which are being blamed for doing border killings, are equally accommodative of the $500 million worth of cattle trade that is taking place. Formally stopped by India would have enormous implications for the dietary consumptions of people in Bangladesh. So, the same border guards can be accommodative to issues, and so you have to draw a line between, if he's such a hawk that he's actually killing people who are innocents who are crossing over, then how is the hawk allowing a certain issue? Farms may have been greased on the way or whatever, but the reality is that there is a certain established communication pattern between the locals and the border guards. Now, when that communication line doesn't get effectively used, and as the distinguished ambassador from Bangladesh was telling us about where you are in the crosshairs, it is not always that you can identify who's crossing over and whether he's on your crosshairs. And then there are those elements that we have some reason to believe, not with Bangladeshi formal connivance, but they do come across from Bangladesh to create a certain degree of problems in West Bengal. So there are issues which concern, and I think the central point which the ambassador and the general both brought out is that we need to address the trust deficit. And if we need this relationship to move forward, we have to shed previous biases and really start going leaps and bounds together. Otherwise, we will be stuck in the same narrative of the past.
Absolutely. So that's the one major issue that has been addressed on this debate. The second issue, Mithila, before if you could bring in your guests on that, and again I'm reiterating, it's an open forum. We would love for each of you to speak to each other. What about terrorism and greater cooperation between the two countries on the issue of terrorism?
এখন একটা বিরতির সময় হয়েছে এবং বিরতি নিয়ে ফেরত আসছি আবার ওই আলোচনায়। বিরতির পর আরও একবার স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি আজকের বিশেষ একাত্তর সংযোগে। এই অনুষ্ঠানটি একাত্তর টেলিভিশন এবং ভারতের টাইমস নাও টেলিভিশন থেকে যৌথভাবে আয়োজন করা হয়েছে। জেনারেল রশিদ, I think you have to say something.
That's right. About this, I think we have made some improvement, and already Bangladesh India has signed an agreement of anti-terrorism and drug trafficking to prevent the drug trafficking. And if we look at the borders on both sides, Bangladesh is quite critical and quite responsive against the terrorism, but still we have seen the Bardhaman blast taken in October, first week of October, and which has the connection of JMB, a terrorist outfit of Bangladesh. Also, their presence are quite visible there, and there we need to have a more intimate cooperation, because we have got a little bit of problem about understanding because a group of terrorists got the shelter in the Indian territory as the Indian secessionists or Ulfas were getting earlier in Bangladesh. So, in this case we have to create a very responsive organization. What I understand that we have cooperation.
But
it has to be formalized through
the
a
external influences of elements within Bangladesh.
Yes. I think
I could not understand
the need of the hour is for very close cooperation among the intelligence agencies. A real-time exchange of intelligence information is what we need. And you know, there was even a SARC decision on this, but that is not really being implemented at all. So bilaterally or sub-regionally between, you know, Bhutan, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, or bilaterally with Bangladesh just alone, we have to do this.
Intel sharing.
We have to do intel sharing, we have to do human intelligence sharing, because India is facing a huge problem, for example, fake Indian currency coming through Bangladesh into India. So obviously they're couriers, it's not being manufactured in Bangladesh, but it's being couriered through Bangladesh, and this is a big problem. Gold smuggling. I mean, I know that in Bangladesh almost every Viman flight carries kilograms of smuggled gold, as announced in their own papers, and they say that a lot of this gold comes straight to the Indian border, and this cattle smuggling, actually gold is used as currency for the cattle smuggling. So I think these are areas we can work on together with great benefit.
Okay, one area, anti-terrorism area that Bangladesh can work on, India-Bangladesh.
Padmaja, I would like to raise one more
I mean,
issue.
we have to recognize that this threat is much bigger than dealing with individuals and putting them behind bars. It's a threat that can actually do to Bangladesh society what we are witnessing in Pakistan. And even powerful armies like the army in Pakistan is then not going to be able to address an issue which then begins to grow completely out of proportion. It is a monster which needs to be curtailed at its very earliest. Now, that's terrorism. But I think there are two other areas of cooperation between Bangladesh and India, and one is energy. There is huge potential for energy cooperation, and Bangladesh has been, you know, desiring more energy from India. The Adani group is setting up some energy initiatives. Reliance is setting up energy initiatives. And I think India should move rapidly, Teesta water or no Teesta water, to try and give, you know, water at the end of the day is one set of issues. Hydropower is one, and the instability and the damage of silt and all to cultivation is one. But I think Bangladesh could do with more energy. We can harness more energy through various hydro projects like in Sikkim and pass it on to Bangladesh. That's one. The second thing is, I think Bangladesh needs to reinforce certain confidence in the Indian business sector in terms of how much investment can come in from India. Tata withdrew
Padmaja, I think we have to
Bangladesh.
We have to add something on this issue, Padmaja, and on the trade issue, we have to say something. Mr. M. Jamir, coming to you.
Yes,
there is a conception, general conception that regarding the trade agreements or treaties, the benefited part would be India. So how do you respond?
No, before that I'll talk about something else, which is, he said water or no water.
Water or no water.
That is not an acceptable solution. You must understand there is a non-navigational use of international water courses. We must get our share of the water because
we have a right on that.
It concerns the well-being of more than 20 million people living in the northwestern part of Bangladesh. If they live and they can grow and have food, only then they can use energy for the purpose of moving. No, please let me finish. Please let me finish. No, I agree with you, but please let me finish. Please let me finish.
I am not at the, I'm not even vaguely suggesting, sir. I'm not even vaguely suggesting that Bangladesh doesn't get its share of water. I'm suggesting that till the water arrangements get sorted out, India should move rapidly to give more power to Bangladesh.
No, I agree.
Look at it positively. Don't look at it that I'm saying that water arrangement will never take place.
I agree with you.
God willing, it will take place as soon as
other issues shouldn't be put on the back burner. Yes,
please let me finish. Please let me finish. I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is, of course, there is possibility of movement forward in the power sector, and we are doing so with a very conscious effort. There is also the context of setting up private economic zones so that people can start manufacturing and create employment for buyback facilities. That's all right. What I'm saying is that we have to move together, and when we want to move together, we have to address the least common denominators, because I will here quote something which Mr. Narendra Modi said. He said that he believes the glass is no longer half empty or half full. It is half empty, but there's a lot of oxygen inside that half empty space for us to grow together. And we are talking now not only of sub-regional cooperation under BBIN, but we are talking of the greater expanse of BICM as well as BIMSTEC. So we are looking forward to Mr. Modi giving us the necessary support in this context.
Can I add on this? And
Of course, Ms. Veena Sikri.
All right, I think that's a very positive note that you have brought this entire debate to. We're completely out of time, but of course, in just a while from now, the Prime Minister of India is going to be in Bangladesh. What is going to be the outcome? Both Ekattor TV and Times Now are going to be following it very, very closely for the time being. I have to thank our guests in Bangladesh. Also have to thank Mithila over there for joining us, and of course, our guests here in the Delhi studio. Thanks so much for having watched this special broadcast.
Thank you very much, Padmaja. Thank you for joining us. অনেক ধন্যবাদ জনাব এম জমির এবং অনেক ধন্যবাদ মেজর জেনারেল আব্দুর রশিদ। দর্শক আপনাদেরকেও ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি এবং আপনাদেরকে আরও একবার মনে করিয়ে রাখি যে ভারত থেকে এই অনুষ্ঠানটি প্রচার করছে টাইমস নাও টেলিভিশন এবং একাত্তর টেলিভিশন। এই অনুষ্ঠানটিকে একটি বিশেষ একাত্তর সংযোগ হিসেবে আপনাদের সামনে উপস্থাপন করছে এবং অনুষ্ঠানটির সাথে আপনারা ছিলেন সেই প্রত্যাশা নিয়ে এবং ভবিষ্যতেও এই ধরনের আয়োজনে আমাদের সাথে থাকবেন এই প্রত্যাশা নিয়ে। একাত্তর সংযোগের পক্ষ থেকে বিদায় জানাচ্ছি। শুভরাত্রি সবাইকে।